A big hello to all the participants and a warm welcome to this session on Web 2.0 Tools for Education. Well, we all know that the concept of web-based education is taking newer shapes every day with the advancements of technologies on one side and with the demands of the academic society on the other side. And especially during the COVID-19 lockdown periods, we can see a lot of technology integration happening right from school education to university education. And as you may be knowing, all these webinars, online learning sessions, and technology mediated instructional practices, which involve the use of web tools and technologies, are essentially using Web 2 services. And I have presented to you the different aspects of Web 2.0 as a service in my lecture notes, which will be shared with you by the organizers. And in this presentation, I shall focus on Web 2.0, the concept, and I would present to you the idea of Web 2.0 in a comparative mode with Web 1.0. And then we move on to discuss two important ideas like learning 1.0 versus learning 2.0. That is, learning using Web 1.0 tools and learning using Web 2.0 tools. And then subsequently, we will discuss a few of the important Web 2 technologies and tools which are of relevance to you and I as teachers of the 21st century. So that is what we plan to do, and I would share my PPT also with you. So sorry for the delay. There was some time delay in getting the PPT shared. So as you can see on the screen, quite a few different names and images are put here, and essentially these are the Web 2.0 technologies tools that we are going to discuss in the next 45 minutes or so. And basically, this expression Web 2.0 refers to the second generation web. See, you might have read, you might have heard that you see the growth and development of computers are always measured or expressed in terms of generations. For instance, first generation computers, second generation computers, like that. And the web is also expressed in the same way. But there is one big difference. For instance, when the first generation computers came up, and then after the advancement, the second generation came, we named them subsequently as second generation, third generation, fourth generation. So in a sense, the first generation came first and the second generation came second. But here, the name Web 2.0, we call that as a retronym, RETRONYM. That is, this Web 2.0 came first, and when the web changed its functioning style and its friendliness in terms of many aspects. So we wanted to name that web which was earlier in use. How was the name to be given? So it was thought that the industry, the W3C consortium, and all these people thought that whatever the web that we have got now, we will name it as Web 2.0, and whatever web that has existed till now, we will call it as Web 1.0. So that is the way Web 2.0 came first and Web 1.0 came next. So the type of web that we are going to talk, right, in the name of Web 2.0, right, where it came and it made rapid changes. It grew tremendously, right, with a lot of patronage from the users, thanks to a lot of facilities, affordances, and advantages. So to have a quick view of what this second generation web is all about, one is, we call the second generation web as read and write web. So I think it will be better if we discuss these points, taking into consideration a comparative view of the Web 1.0 and Web 2.0. So if you call that second generation web as read and write web, then the Web 1 was a read-only web. As you can easily understand the guess meaning and guess what it would have been, people could only go to the websites, web pages, and read what was there. So there was no way that a web user could write something on the web portals. So the second generation web paved way for that. That is why it was named as read and write web. Then the second point for discussion is participatory web, interactive web. As again, you can guess, the Web 1 was a non-participatory and non-interactive web. So it was just there. People could just get one-way communication only was possible. Right, two-way interactivity, and the users in how many in number, however big in number or however small in number, they could not participate with the content, media, and the presentation that's happening on the screen. So the Web 1.0 was non-participatory and non-interactive, and Web 2.0 came with the features of participation and interactivity. And Web 2.0 tools and technologies are all about interactivity. For instance, if today you are getting yourself connected with the system, internet connected system, webcam on, and you sit, and as much as you interact with the software, machine, technology platforms, websites, that much of interactivity these platforms also do with you. That is a point. And then the use, naturally, when participation is allowed, when interactivity is allowed, what the user gets is a richer user experience, right? So the experience that people get on Web 2.0 sites is comparatively richer, right? More advanced, more robust, right? More interactive, more participatory than the Web 1.0 websites. So in general, I can tell you, whatever web experience that you are getting today is basically a Web 2 experience, right? There is nothing more, nothing less. And then the content on the web pages, right, websites, they were dynamic content, right? So contents were not static for months, weeks together. They were not the letters, pictures, right? They were just stagnant on the screen. But here the content is dynamic. For instance, if you go to your own college website today, you will find the pictures moving right on the screen. Maybe yesterday or the day before yesterday, there was a webinar and somebody is inaugurating, that image is immediately uploaded. It comes there. That's what we call as the dynamic content. And the second aspect of the Web 2.0 content is that the content is editable. We will see the wiki platforms where people, the users, can edit content, right? So it is not that in olden days, content will be there in on the screen of some website, and you can only just read it. Sometimes you couldn't even copy, right, a couple of words or sentences. So there is no way of thinking editing the content, right? Then the mantras of second generation web are these two words: openness and freedom. See, there is something called open educational resources. Though they are deeply integrated into Web 2.0, I am not going into it because it's a different topic, open educational resources. But you see, with Web 2.0 and with all these user participation, social networking, right, content sharing platforms, and all these Creative Commons licensing and other things, there is a lot of openness in the content sharing. that happens on the Web 2.0 sites. And the users, right, get a lot of freedom, right, compared with the users of the Web 1.0 sites. And then the whole second generation web portals are functioning on this collective intelligence. It is not that a single author writes the contents and puts it up on the web portals, right? It is editable content and modifiable. People can add, people can give comments, and people can suggest edits, right? All these are possible in the second generation web. As you can see, these were all the key factors that make the Web 2.0 a much useful one for the users. And the absence of these features was the quality of the Web 1.0, which was at the primitive stage, at the starting stage. Of course, at that stage, they were all high-end technologies, no doubt. But now with the expansion of the web technologies, tools, and the users' contribution, these things are taking a big shape. No doubt Web 3.0 will come, and then subsequently the next generation's web portals will also come. Already research is all going on Web 3.0, semantic web, right, and other things, right? It is going to be there, right? Again. So now, specifically focusing on using the web tools for learning, right? You see, this is the type of scenario that existed in the learning 1.0 time. That is using Web 1.0 tools for web-based education, online learning, and digital learning. So that the tag that goes with this, it was an age of authority. That means, as you can see, there is a teacher. You see on the right top, you could see a person with a tie and all, coat. He is there, and then in between the tools, web technologies, right? That was there. So the teacher can share the content to the students through these web portals, Web 1.0 portals. And it was a one-way communication. You see, what was possible? Reading, receiving, and responding. So what the users could do, they could only read the content on the screen. There was no listening, there was no watching. Please understand, no audio, video. It was only text content. So they can receive the messages, receive the information, receive the ideas, and they can respond to it, right? So nothing more, nothing less, right? But in the context of learning 2.0, that is use of Web 2 tools for learning, as you can see on the screen, all are equal. You see, the teacher is there, no doubt, at one end. The learners are there either in groups or alone, and all of them are equal. And it's not a kind of a top-down approach. It's all participatory. It's all content sharing on an equal level. And another important thing that you could say is it is not a one-way communication. It is communication from the teacher to the students, among the students, from student to teacher. All this, that is happening. That is why we call this learning 2.0 era as the age of engagement. So what happens here is the 3 C's. Connecting, basically social networks are meant for connecting people, right? A wide spectrum of connectivity. And then creation and co-creation, right? People can create content and can co-create content with others, right? And contributing to the web, not only consuming the content from the web, but also contributing content to the web. So this is a big difference between learning 1.0 and learning 2.0, or the use of education in web through web 1 and web 2, right? So here I have a very great educational technologist by name John Moravec. His 3-point analysis, how education 1.0 was happening, and how in the Web 2 era education is happening, and in how in the future education 3.0 era education will be happening. And of course, he is analyzing these concepts from the several points of view. I have just highlighted a few. How meaning once was dictated, and now it is socially constructed, and in the future it will be socially constructed and contextually reinvented. And how in earlier days teaching was done teacher to student, and today it is, and in the future education 3.0, student to teacher, people to technology. So co-constructivism, I was talking about it earlier. You appropriately have a look at the screen. And of course, each one can be explained in a very elaborate way for nearly 10 to 15 minutes. I hope for want of time, I'm not going into it. I hope you will be in a position to reflect upon these points of comparison, derive for it, out of it. So now, as I told you, in the next half an hour, what I plan to do is some of there are very many tools available in the web which are under Web 2.0. I will give you a list of the directories, Web 2.0 directories. If you go there, I'm sure you will get a lot of Web 2.0 tools, and that list is expanding also. It is not that a complete finite list of Web 2.0 tools are there. It is expanding like anything, right? Every day some new tool is being developed and shared with the community. So I would, there are many, as I told you, and all of them are not tuned for all activities. Some of them are not meant for use by teachers at all. They are more for the industrial corporate use. Some of the Web 2.0 tools. So some of the tools are generic by nature. You can use it for education, entertainment. You can use it for work. You can use it for profession, anything for that matter. So I am going to focus on a few important Web 2.0 tools which are of relevance to you and I as teachers. For these things can be used by you and I for facilitating learning. One is blogs, right? As you can see, blogs are websites, individual websites, personal websites, teachers, sports people, cinema people, right, journalists, politicians, anybody in the world can have their own websites, right? That's it, right? But you see, every teacher cannot afford to have a website by paying several thousand rupees. And whatever a teacher would do with the help of a website created by himself or herself for his or her own use, these teachers can do almost the same using a blog. So only difference is blogs are free of cost, no money is involved, right? And these are basically websites in which the bloggers, that is the users, those who use the blog, post items on a regular basis, and the contents always get displayed in chronological order. Whatever post you do today will be there on the top, and whatever post you have done yesterday, the day before yesterday, last week, it will be in the chronological order. And academic blog posts, for instance, a teacher sharing his or her knowledge to the student through blog posts. And for sharing that knowledge, the teacher can have multiple media content, right, made available on the blog. For instance, the contents can be in text form, images, audio, video, web links, all these things for promoting learning. And you see, there are lots of blogging platforms. There are several thousand blogs available. And of course, common blogs are several crores. And academic blogs are again several lakhs, no doubt. And some of the academic blogs like edu blogs, academic blogs, you can see and for yourself how they have so much of academic contents for sharing with the student community or any learner community for that matter. And whatever I put in red, Blogger, WordPress, they are all the sites meant for anybody interested in creating a blog. For instance, if you go to wordpress.com, I'm not doing any marketing for WordPress, but I'm just telling you because I'm mentioning this WordPress for the simple reason that it's a very, very user-friendly platform. And in about 5 to 10 minutes time at the maximum, any teacher, right, with minimal ICT skills can create a blog. And if you spend another 45 minutes or 1 hour, I'm sure you will be in a position to put a lot of posts or schedule a couple of posts, right, for subsequent uploading on the blog, right? It's possible. Such user-friendly platform is that WordPress, right? I just show you a couple of screenshots. WordPress.com is this one, right? So create an unforgettable website, as you can see, right? So, and when you create, when you go to create a blog for yourself, there will be many options there. You can choose simply a free plan. That means a 3 GB space without any money. And that subsequently, depending on the use, depending on the types of contents that you upload, if you think that you require more space, of course, you can go for payment plans. Of course, again, the payments are very, very minimal, 100 rupees, 200 rupees, 500 rupees, right, per month or something like that, right? So you can have higher space because it is like simply having some space. They give you free of cost 3 GB, right, without any payment, right? But if you think that you want to have more video content, more audio contents or more images on your blog for explaining certain concepts in your subject, you can think of expanding your plans, right? That is the basic idea. And this is for creating a blog for yourself. And platforms like bloggeries.com, globofblogs.com, blogorama.com, these are all actually not bloggeries. They are not blogs by themselves, but they are all repositories of blogs, or rather I would say uh, they're directories of blogs. For instance, what bloggeries.com does is it collects all the blogs from the world. Some blogs contain information on sports, some have something related to yoga, some have something related to food and health. Some blogs contain some information about cricket, some blogs contain about cinema, right? So music, right? Literature. So they collect all these blogs, categorize them, and present them for easy use. For instance, if a student is looking for some blogs which contain information or which contain knowledge about literatures, right? English literature or American literature, right? So they can click on literature blogs, right, in the bloggeries category, and all the blogs which contain content which are there with contents on literature, language will be there, right? So that is the way users can get benefited using this directories of blogs, right? So in fact, as an activity after the session, back home when you are free in the evening, you can just go to wordpress.com. I'm sure in about less than half an hour's time, you will be in a position to create a blog for yourself and upload content, right? Okay. And the next Web 2.0 tool that I thought I would share with you is podcasts. Podcasting, podcasts, right? So as you can see, there are two words that go into the making of this word. One is iPod and another one is broadcast, right? Okay. So now we have moved from broadcasting to telecasting to webcasting, right? So that is the thing. And podcasts are a combination of this iPod and broadcast, and that word was coined in the year 2004. And it is it was earlier all audio files, but now it is video files also can be there, and multimedia embedded videos also is possible through podcast, right? And a podcast can even mean both the content and the method delivery, right? And anybody who is creating podcasts and sharing it on podcasting platforms, they're called as podcasters. And I would appeal to you, I would of course show you a couple of screenshots, right? Sites like this, like podcastox.ac.uk or learnoutloud.com. For instance, I'm going to show podcast.oxford, and learnoutloud.com is a web portal which has a collection of a lot of audio resources for learning. So it has a link for a lot of podcasts also. For instance, this one, Oxford University's podcasting platform. See, a university, one of the best in the world, like University of Oxford, with a very long standing and great reputation, it has an exclusive podcasting platform on its from its campus. So what happens here is, so whatever the people think that they are worthy of sharing with the world as podcasts, some important lectures, special lectures, right, invited talks, they capture the entire video, and of course they convert them into freely downloadable podcasts and make them available here for anybody to access. For instance, you need not be sitting in the Oxford University campus to listen to a lecture on Shakespeare in drama, right, by an Oxford professor, because if the university makes it available as a podcast, that important lecture delivered by an Oxford professor on Shakespeare in drama you can get it as a freely downloadable podcast here. And I have put some red rounds over certain things like CC, because these are all basically free podcasts in the sense that they are freely downloadable. Why they are freely downloadable is because they come under the category of open educational resources, right? Where common knowledge, right, is for everyone. That symbol CC, Creative Commons, is the licensing authority which makes it as a public domain accessible content. Right? So this is something that I wanted to share about podcasts. And the next one, most of us know this: wikis, Wikipedia, Wiktionary, Wikimapia, many things we use in wiki platforms. And the word meaning of quick, of wiki, in Hawaiian language, it means quick or fast. So wiki is basically a collaborative tool, and it uses the users can work together to create a specific product. It can be a report or a reference guide or a book or an encyclopedia or an assignment, anything for that matter. See, with wiki, what we say is the content is UGC, not University Grants Commission, but user generated content. For instance, if you go to Google and search for a keyword like New Delhi, okay, so there are a lot of websites in the search page which give a lot of details about those websites, which contain some information on New Delhi. So maybe I'm sure you will see Wikipedia also. The second or third search result will be en.wikipedia.com/ right, New Delhi, something like that. So if you click open, you may find a lot of writings about New Delhi, pictures of some tourist places, Qutub Minar, right, many other things, the parliamentary building, many other things. Who has provided all these contents? Who has written on the Wikipedia pages something about Delhi? And for instance, Wikipedia doesn't have any authors, any content writers to do the work, because as I told you, it is basically on user generated content. Every word that you find on the Wikipedia pages about New Delhi, they have all been contributed by the users. Somebody who has gone to Delhi, somebody who has some information to share with the world about Delhi, they have only given all the contents there. That is why I said users can generate and edit content. And here, wiki platforms can be effectively used as good opportunities for students to participate. Each one will not individually work. If some group assignment is put and they make use of a wiki platform, then people will easily can monitor and find out who has done which work and who has modified the contents. Right? So in the learning teaching process, with wikis, students can create, modify, and add content. For instance, there are a lot of wiki platforms here. I made it as UGC, user generated content, like Wiki Educator India, Wikibooks, and other educational wikis. I would show you one simple web portal here. This is a Wikibook platform. Why I am showing you particularly Wikibook platform is because so many people tend to wrongly take the idea that wiki based contents are available only in Wikipedia, not in other forms. But wiki based contents are available in Wikipedia, Wikimedia, Wiktionaries, Wikimaps, right? And these wiki books are also another good platforms. You can go and find all subject books available. And most important thing is, after reading the book on a wiki book site, if you think that you can add something to that book, you can edit that content. The one who comes next will again have better contents, right? So that is how wiki platforms work, right? So the next thing I wanted to share with you is WebQuest. As you can easily guess, the meaning is clear. WebQuest, web-based quest for knowledge. So it is a quest, search for knowledge on a website. It's web-based, so with some guidance, no doubt. So it is a kind of a lesson in the format of some questionnaires. So these people, right, Bernie Dodge at San Diego State University, they developed it. And the main goal is to make the students to find and work with information from the web. So when we give a task, I'll explain to you how a web quest works. So web quests are basically on the ideas of inquiry and constructivism, because here it is not stuffing the knowledge that we have on the face of the student. It is allowing them to learn on their own. It is allowing them uh, uh, along with some guidance, so that they will be in a position to progress from level to level to master some constructs, some contents. So it is based on constructivist philosophy, and webquest encourage the students to use their higher order levels of thinking, the so-called HOTS, higher order thinking skills, like analytical skills, problem solving, creativity. Without that, the students may not be in a position to solve the problem in the webquest. I'll show you, right, how the different components of a webquest are very judiciously presented and mixed. Then what is possible with webquest is very simple: create collaborative and cooperative learning. It is possible. Collaborative learning can be created easily with the help of webquest. And you see, the components of the webquest are these 6-7 things here. Introduction will be there, a task is given, and a process is also presented, how they are supposed to move from one to the other, and the necessary resources for doing the task also will be given. Here the teachers have to work more, so that the students will be working less, and evaluation will be there, conclusion page will be there, credits will be there, whomever you would like to acknowledge, you can do that, and a teacher page will be there, your name, your email ID and mobile number, your photograph, everything will be there. And I just show here one important website you cannot miss with regard to webquest, that's Zunol.com. And the components of a webquest are also given here: introduction, task, process, evaluation, conclusion, and teachers page also separately given here. And this is a screen grab of one wiki from Zunol.com. And you can see here the webquest, the theme is the life and times of William Shakespeare. And onto the left side, you can see on the top, we have put something like the different components, like the welcome note is there, the introduction, task, the process is there, evaluation, conclusion, the teacher page where we can put our images, email ID, phone number, right? About the author of the web quest, all these things are possible, right? And the most important thing is what happens here is learning by design. We design an activity and we help our students to go through the different processes, so that they will be completing the task and they will get their work done, right? And the process is also very clearly spelled out, and the resources that are necessary for completing the task, the online resources are also given here. And the final web 2.0 tool that I wanted to share with you is the hot potatoes, right? The hot potatoes, the name looks a little funny, right? And it looks like as a nice dish, right? And it's basically a web 2.0 technology or a tool that allows the teachers to create their own materials for subject, content, instruction, and tests. So here, the teachers are given the opportunity and the freedom to use the platform for developing necessary learning management contents, and they can also create tests, and teachers can develop interactive type, multiple choice, fill in the gap, crosswords, short answers, multiple types of items can be developed. This is basically for tests. And you see, the hot potato suite consists of 6 different testing systems, right, or programs for testing. One is called closed procedure, that is a fill in the blank type, a continuous test, and a quiz will be there, crossword puzzle, right, will be there, and match the meanings, matching the meanings or matching the years with the wars, or matching a formula with a particular mathematical concept. It can be anything. And when you say it is mixed, all these contents are put together and it is just mashed and shared. Right? And these programs have a lot of interactive features like hints, scores, clues, and icons, so that the learner participation is best ensured. It is there, right? And this is the origin. I have written clearly in my lecture notes that write up in which university these hot potatoes were developed and in which universities currently they are used. I put it's a Canadian site, hotpot.uvic.ca, University of Victoria, Canada. That was the organization that developed these hot potatoes. See, you can see this is a screenshot of the latest. Uh, I think it is 7. Yeah, so 7 version. So all these menus and submenus like downloads, tutorials, right? All these things are there, and anyone can easily download the latest version of Hot Potatoes and work on it, because Hot Potatoes is just a platform, like a white sheet on which we write our items. So the capacity of a teacher to write good items is more important in the context of creating Hot Potatoes. Right? So as I told you, there are quite a lot of Web 2.0 apps, tools, and technologies available in the world. Some of the directories of Web 2 tools are here, something like GoToWeb20.net, Listio, right, Xflash, on the app. These are all some of the important directories of the Web 2.0 tools and technologies. You can log in and get the benefit. What I have tried to do here is present to you some 5 or 6 Web 2.0 tools, only with the objective of increasing your curiosity and making you work more and better with Web 2.0 technologies. I always close my talks on ICT, e-learning, e-content, mobile apps with this person, Alvin Toffler. He is a very celebrated writer, where at the dawn of the 21st century, he was mentioning this. If you don't take steps to to control to sorry, there was an interruption here. I would the last part I would do again. See, as I told you, Alvin Toffler is a celebrated writer, and this person came with this point: learning, unlearning, and relearning are important. They are the mantras for real success in the 21st century profession. So when we talk about Web 2.0, Web 3.0, and whatever it is, any teacher of the 21st century, we have to learn these new technologies, new apps, new tools, and we have to unlearn certain old things, right? Some of us might have started working with basic RDBMS, right? Some of us would have started with Windows platform. Some of us are moving towards next level of the web tools and technologies. All of us have to learn newer things, unlearn certain old things, and relearn these technologies every time there is a change, okay? So that we will make ourselves relevant teachers, whether it is Web 2.0 or Web 3.0. So let me now thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity of sharing my knowledge on this Web 2.0. I hope you found this video useful. And as I told you, the Web 2.0 directories, you can take maybe the screenshots of that, and you can explore these websites and know for yourself what are the different tools. Several thousands of tools available, right? You can easily make use of them. And one thing I also would like to tell you is that the higher the technologies are going, the more advanced they are becoming, the more robust they are becoming. They also keep becoming more and more user friendly. So you can easily work with them, right? And in no time, right, you will be in a position to master, right, how to handle these tools, right, for better facilitation of learning and better testing, right? So with these few words, let me thank every one of you for your active listening, and I hope you will get some more inputs, right, in my lecture notes I have shared with the organizers. and the PPT also has been shared. So I hope you will find these contents meaningful in the context of Web 2.0 in education. Right. So thank you very much, and you can feel free to be in touch with me on my mail ID, or you can even use my WhatsApp number, so that whenever I'm free, I'll be in a position to respond, right, to your queries or clarifications or any points that you would like to discuss with me. Right. Thank you.